Hello all, and again, thank you for joining. We will give other folks a couple of minutes to get logged in. Thank you for joining. I'm going to give folks yet just a couple of more minutes. Stay tuned. Okay, we are at about 3 minutes after the hour. I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes. Thank you to those who are on. People are still signing in. Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for taking your time to join us today. My name is Beth Strobush, and I am PR Director for Orbita. First, a quick tidbit about our company. Orbita has created a first-of-its-kind solution. Our voice platform is used in conjunction with solutions like Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant, enabling organizations to quickly and easily create and manage intelligent conversational experiences. And so for those of you who are familiar with the world of content management, you can think about it sort of like WordPress for voice. Most recently, we've extended beyond the voice first concept to offer a create once, publish everywhere omni-channel approach with chatbots and other devices and voice offerings. And while today's webinar is not focused specifically on healthcare, our company does focus squarely in this realm. We see really great opportunity for voice to improve patient engagement, and in doing so, improve healthcare outcomes and reduce costs. We're working today with industry leaders such as Mayo Clinic, Merck, Amgen, and others in healthcare delivery, pharma, biotech, and device manufacturing. We're thrilled to bring this webinar to you today, especially because we have with us one of the earliest pioneers in the world of voice skill development and one of the most successful. Jordan Muir is senior producer in the games division of Sony Pictures Entertainment. He's been intimately involved with work on the Jeopardy! Teen Jeopardy! And Sports Jeopardy! Skills for Amazon Alexa, including efforts to pioneer payments and subscriptions on the platform. Did you know that Jeopardy! Is one of the most popular Alexa skills? Some even speculate it's at the top of the list. I'll take, how cool is that for 1,000, please, Alex? Jordan studied screenwriting at USC. He shared with me that he taught himself programming via a Stanford class published on YouTube. And not surprisingly, he grew up watching Jeopardy! Every night. Co-presenting with Jordan is Bill Capa, one of my all-time favorite colleagues. As Orbita's Chief Product Officer, he's responsible for product strategy and management. Previously, Bill founded WiseMind, a SaaS platform providing big data analytics for content marketing. He also played a pivotal role in the development and subsequent acquisition of a company that pioneered the world of web content management. He's a published author, tech advisor, and founder of the New Hampshire Data Science Group, and he holds multiple patents in information retrieval. In addition to studying computer science, he has studied Italian and fine art. And in New Hampshire on weekdays at 7:30 p.m., he can often be found tuning into Jeopardy! With that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Bill to get started.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much, Beth. I appreciate the introduction. And Jordan, thank you for co-presenting with me today. And everybody, I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in today's webinar. So thank you, everybody. I thought a good way to frame the discussion today would be first to really make it crystal clear that there is a really big problem with voice experience today, and that's the problem of abandonment. So abandonment's a term that you'll hear in user experience circles. As you probably know, since you're here, abandonment is not a desirable thing. It's basically what happens when somebody sees the value of an application, they download it, and for whatever reason, that experience falls short of their expectations. So they either delete the app or they forget about it entirely. But the nutshell is they never use it again. And from a mobile app perspective, there was a study done that was back in 2016. It was by a company called Localytics. And their study showed that 80% of mobile apps are abandoned after 3 months. So that means simply I install 10 apps. After 3 months, I'm likely only going to be using 2 of them. So those aren't really great rates, but you're going to find out it's not much better for voice. It's pretty bleak. So let's talk about voice. And to talk about the problem in voice, I want to set up some context. So the first thing I want to do to understand really the scope of the problem is look at voice first devices. There were approximately 25 million voice first devices shipped in 2017. That, made a total footprint of about 33 million if you include both the Amazon Alexas and all the other ones. So the 25 million was specifically for Alexa, but if you include all the others, it takes you up to about 33 million devices. And if you compare that to the prior year, you're looking at a comparison of in 2016, there were about 7 million voice first devices. In the year prior, looking at 2015, there are 1 million. So you can see some serious exponential growth here. Should be no surprise that Amazon is leading the way here. And in 2017, they introduced a number of new voice first devices, as did Google with their Google Home and the Mini and others. Microsoft introduced some, Lenovo introduced some, and there are a number of specialized voice first devices out there. For example, in healthcare, one of our partners is a company called Pillow. So there's exponential growth here based on solid market demand for these devices. But what happens when these devices get home? How are these people using them? And more specifically, how are they using the custom skills that they put on these devices once they get it home? So let me look at the Alexa skills information I've got here. So a skill is like an app for the Alexa. So just like, mobile devices have apps that you get from an app store, Alexa has skills that you install from the Amazon Skills Store. At the beginning of 2016, there were really, let's look at this, in the 3-digit numbers here, even if you go back to early, 2016, there was one study done that showed in January 2016, there were about 130 skills. That's, obviously a far cry from where we are currently. September 2017, the check was 2,000 skills in the United States. So if you kind of look at the broad set of skills and you kind of categorize them, they span a whole bunch of categories from, time waster jokes to, frequently asked questions to, trivia games to, healthcare. And as Beth mentioned, we're Orbita is focused on healthcare with our product, and the use cases that our customers are interested in are really more focused on patient education, adherence and compliance, using voice to assist with clinical trials and the testing of drugs in the home, improving adherence with regards to drugs, assisted living facilities to engage residents and help them better engage with their care circles and caregivers. So whole bunch of use cases out there. But really, what happens when somebody installs the skills? So there are plenty of skills out there. There are plenty of devices there for distributing these skills. So really, where is the problem? Well, let's look for some tells. One such place that we can really look is the Amazon Skills Store itself. So the Amazon Skills Store is like the App Store, like I said. You can browse around, you can take a look at the voice skills, you can see reviews, you can see comments, and you can pick the one you like and enable it on your skill. So some analysis has been done on the voice skills in general, and it's been found that about 30% of the skills have more than one review. So 2 or more. 70% of the skills have 0 reviews or 1 customer review. So it's not definitive, but it's clearly starting to give us a sense that by and large, a lot of the skills are experiencing a low engagement rate. So then enters a study from a company called Voice Labs. And this company showed that, did a report that showed that once a user enables a voice app, there's only a 3% chance on average, 3% that the user's going to be an active user by the second week. So you thought the mobile stats were bad that I mentioned earlier. Reality is 3% is pretty abysmal. And, granted, this study, as I mentioned, was a year old. Well, let's make an assumption that number's improved, by 2x or 3x. Well, we're still dealing with, a single digit retention rate. So really, there's work to be done. So let me get to the next slide right here, and start to dive into what are these challenges? Why is the retention rate so bad? I don't want to, before I get into these, I just want to give you a little glimmer of hope. Sir, there are a vast number of skills out there that are doing well. So what we're going to get into later is, the tips and techniques that you can apply to your voice skill to make sure it's not falling into the trap that many skills are falling into. So to understand what those traps are, I really wanted to set up before Jordan gets into the lessons learned, tips, and best practices from his experiences with the Jeopardy skill. I really wanted to get into why skills are abandoned. And, like everything in life, it boils down to, 2 things that you can control and things that you can't. And fortunately, in this situation, we're really dealing with things that you have control over. The reason why that number is so abysmal is that, people really don't understand voice user experience right now. And the number one struggle is knowing what's possible. There's an invisible UX, right? People can't see it. With a visual user interface, it's all in front of you. So people, can kind of work through it at their own pace, and they can see what's available, and they can kind of click through and discover, what the possibilities are. A good visual UX is discoverable. So, maybe you don't present everything at once, but you can kind of click your way through, and you can kind of get cues through the visual interface, what else is out there. With a voice user experience, obviously you don't have that visual. So there's an immediate challenge. How do you present to your user what's possible with the voice user experience? And how do you present that explorable kind of that interface that encourages exploration? And if you do encourage exploration, you've got to allow people the ability to back out and correct an error, or even better, prevent an error entirely. So these are all very significant user experience challenges that a lot of skill creators just right now maybe don't have the skill set to handle, or maybe they're unaware of these challenges because it's all so new. But this is the number one challenge. How do you present the information to the user so that they can understand what the capabilities are? And the reality is that, the kind of knee-jerk reaction people often have when they're trying to create a voice-first skill is to throw the kitchen sink at the user. So you launch the skill and you get everything under the sun and a laundry list of capabilities. And the reality is, you throw too much at a user and they're not going to be able to remember it. In fact, not only are they not going to remember it, but they're actually going to have a negative experience because they're going to be trying to remember it. So have you ever tried to remember a long list of numbers, and you can remember how, if you have, you can relate to how frustrating that experience can be. You only maybe remember the first ones and maybe the last one, you forgot the ones in the middle. And what do you do now? How do you get to hear the list again? But overall, there's this cognitive overload that often results from kind of the initial approach that many individuals will take who are creating these voice skills when trying to present all the options to the user. So users struggle with remembering dialogue content, remembering the information in log lists, and retaining all that information so they know what's possible. So that's a really big challenge that you'll find in many experiences. And the third is just an overall poor experience. And what do I mean by this is just, as I said, there aren't many voice experience experts out there, and a lot of user experience professionals are in the process of retooling their skill set to become more familiar with voice and understand guidelines and best practices for developing voice experiences that don't fall into these traps. But by and large, you're going to find that there are a lot of experiences out there that really make a task harder to accomplish using voice, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do. With voice, you're trying to make it so that, you can accomplish a task more simply. You're trying to reduce the friction. And oftentimes you'll find that with skills, you're increasing the friction. You're lacking even context or an understanding of who the user is and maybe their skill level. Just a quick example before we turn it over to Jordan. I am a huge devotee of this one particular task tracking application. I've used it for about a decade. Big fan of their first web application, got their desktop application when it became available, used their mobile app when it became available, and I was extremely excited when they offered a voice experience. So I installed it, I launched it, and it came up with this very helpful message that gave me a long kind of overview and welcome message to the skill. I thought that was great. I launched it again, the same message. Every time I launched the skill, I had to listen to this long-winded message, which meant simply that anytime I wanted to add a task, I could be guaranteed that by the time that message finished, I had long since forgotten what the heck I wanted to add to my task tracking app. So this longtime user of this task tracking application through web, mobile, and desktop, have long abandoned that voice skill. And I promise you, if it were working, I've got Alexas in many rooms of my home. I would love to be able to add a task to my task tracking app through the voice skill that they provided, but I've abandoned it. So I'm kind of like a perfect, there's a perfect use case for why users are abandoning skills. It's not that they're not interested, it's just that the user experience for many of these are terrible. But as I mentioned, all hope is not lost. We've got Jordan on the call on the webinar today, and he's going to be talking about his experiences, and lessons learned through the Jeopardy skill. There are, as I mentioned, a number of skills out on the skill score that do fall into this category of having 4 or more, stars associated with it. Very positive rating, high user engagement. And when you do a search for a skill on the skill store and you sort it by engagement, you're going to find these as the top 2. So we're very excited to have Jordan with us today to present his best practices and tips.
Thank you, Bill. That's wonderful information, and really excited about the things that we're learning and able to share. Just a quick note, when we talk about a recent study that was published, interestingly, in healthcare just last month. An organization called the Front Porch Center for Innovation and Wellbeing did a pilot analysis of how Amazon Alexa could promote independence and well-being of older adults in one of their retirement communities in California. And their earliest data says that 75% of seniors in their facility that were in the pilot used their smart device at least once a day. 100% of them felt Alexa's overall made their life easier, and 71.5% felt more connected to family, friends, and the community since they started using Alexa. So really, really powerful stuff in healthcare. We're really excited about it. And I think some of the lessons we're going to hear from Jordan apply, obviously across the board, but in healthcare specifically. And with that, really quickly, we will be at HIMSS, Healthcare Information Management System Society event in early March. And please log into our Contact Us page and sign up to visit us at our booth if you'd like to do so. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth, and thanks, Bill. So welcome. So yeah, just to lead into this conversation, Jeopardy is among the most popular skills on the platform now. We have 4 and change stars on in reviews. We didn't always have that. Actually, it was pretty rough at first. So I'll get into that in a little bit. But for those of you that have not used our skill before, here's a little breakdown of how it works. And to kind of speak to some of the cognitive load, some of the issues of the invisible user experience, we've really kept everything on rails for users. So there's a starting point and an ending point, and people really can't get off the path. So at the beginning, people will say, Alexa, play Jeopardy. It will fire into the skill. You'll hear the intro music of This is Jeopardy. And we do a little check in the beginning if you're a first-time user. We'll serve a little extra information to tell you what's going on. We recorded with Alex Trebek to do this. And it's kind of a fun little intro piece there. And then we get right into the clue sequence. If users get through clues, it's always the standard Jeopardy format. They're presented with the clue. They have to respond in the form of a question. So it's always who is or what is, such and such. If users don't respond in that format, we just keep them in the loop. So it's either they give a right response, a wrong response, or if there's something random, we just keep looping them through that clue sequence. There's a couple other kind of side paths I didn't illustrate in here, like help, and if someone says quit at any time, we will quit. But generally our goal is to get people from the start to the end of the experience as fast as possible. Right now there are 6 clues to get through. We've added it up to 12 for Prime users, for Amazon Prime users. And so that's been an interesting experience for us, increasing the length of the game. Some other kind of tweaks we have to make this feel more alive, where I have single blocks here, there are actually some randomization that happens. So kind of the introduction, this is Jeopardy. There's a couple of lines that Alex Trebek recorded that we have. At the end of the game, you're given your score. You'll say you got 10 out of 12 today. Alexa presents some kind of congratulatory message. And we also have a couple of different closing remarks from the talent. So that variety makes it feel a lot more alive. Then getting into working with the established IP of Jeopardy, it made a lot of sense for us. Jeopardy was meant for voice. It's been on the air for 34 years now, I think it is, and there have been games going back to the NES, but it was always a compromise on the other platforms for how you play the game. It was either multiple choice, or in some really poor cases, you had to type the answer with the D-pad on some game consoles early on. And it's always been subpar to the actual game show. So when we presented this to the showrunners at Jeopardy, they really loved it. Initially, it was just a prototype that an intern had done, but once the senior management, senior executives saw it, they knew that there was something there, and they knew that there was something that really had legs to go along with it. We released in, I think it was either December 2015 or January 2016, so right when there was only a couple hundred skills out there. So we were very early, and it was difficult early on. So people didn't really know how to start a skill. When someone said play Jeopardy, it would actually play music instead of starting the game. We got a lot of one-star reviews early on because of that, because people just couldn't figure out how to start the skill. And Amazon has actually changed their system to enable the word play to work for more than just music. But we've had a lot of feedback from users, and we've had a lot of success with people engaging with it and staying engaged. So that's been really great for us. Since the initial Jeopardy, we've also launched 2 sub-brands of Teen Jeopardy and Sports Jeopardy. Rather than being daily games, they are weekly. So we do see usage that is more in line with that. So we release new clues for those every Friday as opposed to every weekday. And so you'll see big spikes in usage on those Fridays when the new content's available. So getting into some of the ways that we've kind of built this stuff, like to say, we have to adapt, react, and iterate. The Jeopardy skill that is live now is not the same one that launched 2 years ago. We have constantly been improving it and adding new features as new features have become available to the platform. And a lot of people just don't know how to interact with these devices yet. So that's been a learning experience on both our side and user side. So people come along and they'll ask for more content. We'll give them more content. And we realized that there's more opportunities, so we went and we recorded with Alex Trebek to add the voiceover. The initial experience was just the Alexa voice, which felt very, very, very bland on its own. When Amazon released the screen-based devices, so with the Echo Show and recently with the Echo Spot, we were at the forefront to make sure that the product was supported on those platforms and made sure that it felt like Jeopardy. So we actually serve the traditional white text on a blue background card on those visual devices. And then I mentioned the sub-brands. We've also pioneered with Amazon some purchase models, some payment models. So on the Jeopardy skill, we have subscriptions. So if you're an Amazon Prime user, you get an extra 6 clues a day, or you can choose to purchase the subscription. And then on Teen and Sports, in December, we released one-time purchases. So they are actual packs that are available for sale on both those platforms, in addition to the weekly clues that are available for free. And the one-time purchases, having a catalog of content, definitely introduced a lot more complexity to the whole model of the skill. So that that straight backbone is there from starting the skill, getting through the clues to the end of it. But the purchasing adds a lot more to that equation. So with that, our process, when we started it, I had a screenwriting background. I've done some work in writing for games. We started everything in just spreadsheets because it was just a pretty simple flow from beginning to end. It became extremely overwhelming to put things in the spreadsheets. We then moved to flowcharts. The flowcharts got too complicated, so went to better flowcharts. So the entire lesson is don't feel fixed in one method. Don't feel stuck in one way of doing things, because there's so much change still happening that I think we all need to be flexible and adaptable. I think that developing the user experience for this is some kind of mix of screenwriting and writing an improv sketch. You don't know what the user is going to say on the other end of the device. So you really need to be able to account for anything that can be thrown at you. In our detection, we, in addition to the answers for the clues, we also filter, to say if someone's saying profanity, they probably want to leave the skill. Things like that. So if there's repeated misdetections, we have systems in place where we try to get people out of the skill if it doesn't seem like they're advancing at all. Just ways to avoid frustration, because people can easily be frustrated. Now, speaking to some of those improvements we made, some of them didn't always land well. Early on, you could see about, people were asking for more questions. That was the biggest kind of 3-star review mark that we had for several months. Was that they wanted more content today. They 6 was not enough. Let me play more. Let me play more. And then, of course, as soon as we add more questions, people complain the other direction and say it was better with fewer questions. So you can't please everyone. The quote I like to give is from, I think it was Henry Ford, who said if he listened to all of his customers, he wouldn't have built a car, he would have just made a faster horse. So we're still in that stage of trying to build the faster horse to some extent, because the users don't know what's possible and users don't know what they really want out of a device yet. So I think that there is some listening to users that needs to happen, but at the same time, we still need to innovate and stay ahead of what people think is possible. I think in this regard, though, the ratings are a big ticker for Amazon, and they take them very seriously. So ways that we have secured more reviews is through actually prompting users to at the end of the skill. So when you finish the questions, there's a certain probability that gets triggered for you to get a message to say, if you like the skill, please rate us. And that actually greatly improved our review scores because of some of those early hiccups we had, both around scaling issues early on and Amazon's internal issues of Play Jeopardy playing a music track from their music library. We very quickly went from only 2 stars to over 4 stars just by prompting users to leave a review. Partially because I think people don't know that it's even possible to leave a review. So it's important to always educate users on some of these practices. And right now, there's still no way to leave a review by voice, not that I'm aware of at least. So it takes an extra level of effort for users to open up their Alexa app or go to the website to actually leave the review. So people will not do it in their kind of normal interaction with the devices anymore. Now getting into some of our growing pains, too far. I mentioned a couple things, in terms of Alexa saying, play Jeopardy leading to a music track. There are a couple other things that we've had trouble with, just getting started with the platform, being so early with it. One thing we found out early is that an ampersand will crash her, which is a struggle because a lot of the Jeopardy clues use ampersands. It's part of the kind of the standard style guide from the show. Her pronunciation can be hit or miss. Big recommendation there is for anyone to learn SSML, or at least what's supported with Alexa. It's pretty similar to HTML. We don't use it for everything. It's just when we look at things and find that she doesn't pronounce it correctly, we'll go in and we'll tweak a little bit in that regard. And then there's some weird detection patterns. So we, as the format of the show, we don't have multiple choice. All the questions are open-ended, so people can say anything, and therefore it's a big mystery what actually gets detected. Sometimes that's as simple as adding homophones to the detection. So anytime bear is an answer, we make sure that both B-E-A-R and B-A-R-E are both accepted by our system to lead to the same thing. But then there are some other weird ones that happen. So one story we have is that an answer to a clue was 9 to 5 as the name of a movie, I think it was. But in the Alexa service actually returned that to us as 4:51, the time, because it interpreted 9 to 5 as a time command rather than just passing the text back to us. So there's always things that we're finding, always things that we're trying to work with Amazon to make Alexa better on. On the infrastructure side, we have been pioneers with Amazon on this. We also use Amazon's other services for other products that my group developed. So we have mobile games and free-to-play mobile games that get a lot of usage. So there are limits on the Lambdas and the various infrastructure pieces there. Looking back, we probably would have architected things a little differently for scalability, in particular on the database. But we settled on one way of doing things, and we're adapting to that. For any technical people out there, early on we decided to use the RDS database instead of their newer, more highly scalable Dynamo. So it's just been a matter of us keeping an eye on it and making sure that services are scaled properly. And then lastly, you have to learn to compromise with the device, whether it's the way Alexa pronounces something, the way she detects speech, and also when we launched on the screen-based devices, the Echo Show and the Echo Spot, it didn't react the way we expected a visual device to react coming from a mobile game background. So we simplified things, and really we just kept it as seamless and straightforward for users as we possibly could, while maintaining kind of the authenticity of a Jeopardy experience. And I think also on the compromise side, there are things to know about silence. It's very difficult in trivia, especially without the multiple choice, that people sometimes just don't answer quickly enough. And one of the features of the device is that if you don't answer within the kind of allotted response time, the Alexa will reprompt you to say, we define a reprompt as just a prompt to say, and please give your response. And if people still don't answer, the device actually turns off. That's something that hurt us early on, and to mitigate against that, it's important to always remember where users leave off. And if they quickly come back to the experience after leaving off like that, offer them a chance to resume. When people early on, people would get kicked off, 5 out of 6 clues in, and they'd have to start over from the beginning before we realized that was a problem. So now, if you finish a clue 5 and you get kicked out, or you have to go answer the door and you can't keep going, the skill will remember your position and let you resume from the 6th clue or wherever you left off. Then some of our best practices kind of extends that. It's important to be concise. We try to serve to the user only what's important, and an example is the tutorial in the beginning of our experience. If you're a first-time user, we present you with like a 60-second long opening presentation. But if you're returning for several times after that, we just play a really quick opening snippet and try to get you right into the clues. We don't want to give people too many choices. We really keep them on rails, and that's an expression I use a lot for our experience. It doesn't work for everything, but on a game context where there is a linear progression that happens, I think it's important to keep people on rails. Similarly, it's limit choices. Early on, when we were discussing this with Amazon, they were trying to actually get us to do a multiple choice game, but we said no. With voice, we're going to do it, like the real game show. And multiple choice just doesn't work very well on voice devices. By the time you give the 3rd or 4th option, people forget what the 1st or 2nd one was. And it's just hard for people to keep track. It's all about that cognitive load that people just can't keep track of. And then also in the reprompts, when people don't say anything, or if they say something unexpected, steer them back in the right direction of what to say. So in our reprompt, if someone doesn't answer one of the clues, we say, give your response now, or you can say, I don't know, to continue. And we make sure that people are aware of that option because it's invisible. They don't know what they don't know. Unlike in visual media where you can see the buttons presented before you. The other thing that I think has been really powerful with Jeopardy is that we've created a daily habit for people. And if you can do something or insert yourself into something that people are already doing, it's a really powerful place to be. So our biggest spike in usage happens immediately following the broadcast of the show on the East Coast. So in most East Coast markets, it's at 7:30 p.m. And we see our most of our usage happening at 7:59 p.m. So right when Alex Trebek does his sign off on the broadcast, people are going right to their Echoes to finish the game essentially. And that the other places where we see upticks in usage is early in the morning. So people will play it while they're getting ready for work. And we've some of our misdetection, we do record wrong answers just to kind of see what if we're having a problem with the detection. And every now and then we'll filter in something like, oh, let the dog out. So you see that people are making this part of their normal life. It's in the kitchen, it's in the living room, and people are around it, during their home hours. And speaking of habits that differentiates voice from mobile is that the habit is largely focused around the home right now. Mobile you take everywhere with you, and a lot of these free-to-play mobile games have created habits with these certain monetization strategies of recurring timers and having to check back on your farm type of mechanic. Whereas on voice, you can't be with them everywhere, so you have to figure out when are they going to be in front of the device to interact with it. And then, we still need to practice. We have a QC process for all of our content. Before anything goes out to the public, we have a separate skill that's not available for anyone else, where we actually review all of the clues. So we'll actually hear Alexa present them. We'll give the answers, make sure that the detection is correct, make sure the pronunciation is correct, and just go run through it and make sure that no one's going to have a bad experience, that the skill won't crash because there's a weird character in there. And these systems, they're adequate for most usage. If you're going to read an article, it's capable of reading an article. But if you have a manageable content flow, it's an even better experience if you can adjust it so that it sounds right. And then lastly, I think that we're all still trying to learn here. We all have room for improvement. Users don't really know what the standard practices are on the game side. The Fruit Ninja and Angry Birds are early examples of what touch interaction was capable of, and people very quickly learned through those games what types of games were possible and what types of games are fun on a touch device. Beyond the basics of trivia, I don't think anyone has cracked that on voice yet. And with the voice interface, no one has established kind of that hamburger icon, that hamburger menu that people have become familiar with on web and mobile. And then lastly, one point I'd like to make is that our skill, focuses on retention, partially at the expense of engagement. So we've seeded the fact that we're happy with people playing for 5 minutes once a day, and they come back and they'll play every day after the show airs. But anecdotally, I've spoken to other developers who have very high engagement, and they'll have people play for 30 minutes or an hour, but then they struggle with people coming back to play again and again. So we're still in this balance point. We're creating the short daily habit. Someone else may look to create a longer weekly habit, and it depends on what the user wants and what part of the user's life you're trying to get yourself into. On the gaming side, there's a lot available. I know that Bill had shown the slide for the Magic Door, which is another. It's a story-driven skill that I've played before. That one, is fun. You can definitely play with it for a long time, but you need the constant content to be able to keep interacting with it. And I think a big part of that is having predictable content deliveries. People will forget to check back if you're releasing every 3 days or then every 10 days. If it's not consistent, people won't know when to return. But if you can tell them, come back on this day, you'll see a decent number of people coming back to play again. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Beth and Bill for any closing remarks.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jordan. Really insightful information, and again, very much appreciative of your time to be with us today and share your expertise with our audience. We have some time for some questions and answers. I see that we have had a couple of folks post some things, so please weigh in with your questions, and we will get them answered as soon as we can. Before I go to that, Bill, anything you need to do for last minute housekeeping, or?
No, I was just going to do a quick little plug for the screen that I've got here. Just kind of gives a visual on what we were talking about earlier around Orbita Voice. It's the product that we have at Orbita that enables the creation of these conversational user experiences. So as Beth said, you can kind of think of it as web content management, but for voice. And that's kind of just a quick summary, but when you dive into it a bit deeper, there's a lot more going on. But anyway, just platform to make it easier to build, manage, and deploy these conversational user experiences across devices, voice first devices like the Google Home, Amazon Alexa, Cortana, and text-based conversational interfaces like SMS, text, chat, or web chat.
Super, thanks. And I would encourage folks to visit Orbita's site, orbita.ai. There are lots of resources there, including an archive of recorded webinars, and this can be found there very soon after we're done here today. And please share it with others who you think might benefit from it. Again, we'll be at HIMSS. If you would like to meet us there, please log into our Contact Us page and request a meeting. And if you have any questions, certainly reach out to myself, to Bill, or to us through our Contact Us page. And again, before we go with questions, thanks to both Bill and to Jordan. So first question, yes, we will have the slide deck available, the recorded webinar, archived webinar on our site, orbita.ai. There's a question here. Do you guys do any work incorporating IoT or BLE devices, or focus solely on voice for now? So Bill, would you please take that?
So incorporating IoT or BLE devices. So from an Orbita perspective, absolutely. So voice is a great way to capture data, just like IoT devices are, except in the case of voice, it's using, natural spoken language, and you don't have to remember to charge your fitness tracking device or remember where it is. It's just always around and it's always on. So we, though that's true, do offer the ability to collect information from IoT devices and other devices, both from a data collection standpoint, but also if there's, say, a third-party device that wants to provide, voice capabilities, that's something you could do with this platform as well. We have a number of device manufacturers that are using the Orbita platform for managing conversational experiences that are delivered through these third-party devices.
Super. Thanks. Another question. What software solutions did Jordan's team use to model workflows after moving past Excel? Jordan? Is Jordan with us?
Yeah, he shows up online.
Jordan, are you muted? Maybe he's having technical difficulties. Let's move on and he'll come back if we have him. How to handle unpredictable responses. Let's say I ask a user, how are you feeling today? And can't have a database of acceptable answers to compare against. Can you leave a review via voice? Seems difficult to make users exit voice experiences to leave a review for a voice product. So Bill, maybe unpredictable responses. Can you address that?
Sure. Yeah, Jordan touched on it a bit. The best thing to do is to look at your analytics. So, to kind of make an analogy to something that people are maybe more familiar with, but if you have a website and you've got a web search, one of the things that you want to be doing is looking at your search analytics to see what people are looking for to make sure you've got that content available. In the same way, with a voice experience, you want to be looking at what people are saying and what happens. And as long as you're aware of what people are saying, then you'll have the insights you need to modify the user experience to make sure that people aren't reaching dead ends, that they're able to get the answers that they're looking for or the responses they're looking for. So analytics plays a big part, and that's the kind of stuff that we have as a platform available through Orbita.
Super, thanks. Yeah, I'm seeing a note that Jordan seems to be offline, so not sure if he's having some technical difficulties.
Are you guys hear me?
Oh, yep, can hear you now.
Okay.
Super, thank you.
All right, good. I just dialed into the phone number, so I'm back.
Okay, super, thanks so much. We have a couple questions for you, Jordan.
Okay, go ahead.
What software solutions did you use, your team use to model workflows after you moved past Excel?
So I actually got set up with OmniGraffle, which is a Mac-based user flow. It's just kind of what Sony offered me. It's what IT said when I asked IT for Visio. They're like, "Oh, Visio's not on Mac. Here's OmniGraffle instead." Kind of just took it as necessity, and that's what I've used to wire stuff out. We're kind of on our second version of how to wire those pieces together. The first one was just kind of the very basic, squares and diamonds for decisions, getting through the whole flow. But since then, we've really structured things more as layers of conversation. So the kind of the first part of the conversation will have multiple variations based on, if you're a first-time user, if you are partially completed the game, and so on and so forth. And then, kind of the next tier down will have the clue sequence, and it's not perfect, but we're just kind of moving in a more full direction each time we kind of make a change.
Super, thank you. There is a question, it's the second half of a previous question. Can you leave a review via voice? It seems difficult to make users exit voice experience to leave a review for a voice product.
So I totally agree. And right now, as far as I'm aware, Amazon has not enabled voice reviews. So it's something that we hope that they will do in the future. And the only way to do it is to lead people to the actual Alexa app or the website to do so. So yeah, I agree. It's not a good experience.
Super, thanks. This is a comment, and maybe you can comment on it. Someone says, I think skills can be super helpful. I love the alarm clock and the calling people. But short of that, there are tons of uses of Alexa that are distinct skills, but rather uses of Alexa that can help health without creating new skills, novel applications of existing technology. Do either of you care to comment on that?
So one of the things that Amazon Alexa is trying to do, more from a roadmap perspective, is not something that it can do today. But one of the things that it's trying to do is learn from the skills that are out there and not require the user to manually install the skills to perform those actions. So what I mean by that is, let's go back to my task tracking application. Let's say, I wanted to use my particular task tracking app. So I'd have to go out to the skill store, I'd have to install it, I'd have to invoke it using its invocation name. So Alexa, launch my task tracking app. And then once it's open, I'd have to add my task. So there are a lot of steps there. What Amazon's going to be doing or trying to do is find ways to, understand what the user's intent is, and then identify trusted skills that maybe are not currently installed, install it, and then route the question to that skill, bypassing that entire workflow process I was just describing. So the idea is that there will be more skills available, and Amazon is going to try to link, the user's request to the appropriate skill without having to go through all those hoops. And I think then we'll be at a place where Alexa will be smarter and be able to handle, the kind of requests that, we're hoping Alexa will be able to handle, with a better user experience.
Yeah, no, just speaking to innovation, I'll add to that. I don't think that people have figured out, the best way to interact. And I think partially, at least from my perspective in entertainment and games, we haven't figured out the best way to monetize on the platform. So, it's hard to justify a big expense of development and maintenance if there's no clear return on it. Obviously there have been plenty of marketing experiences. Warner Brothers put out a very fun Batman skill, which was a kind of a choose your own adventure story. And it was, well produced, well crafted, but it was a marketing expense. So they don't really expect people to use it past, after the movie premiered at that time. But, as we've pioneered some of the in-app purchase items, as we've pioneered subscriptions with them, that stuff will be rolling out to the public. And I think you'll see more people trying to take more risks with it once there's a way to kind of make ends meet.
May have lost Beth there. I think
here I am. I was muted. I apologize.
Sure.
A lot of conversation around Alexa, but besides Alexa and Google Assistant, what other services do you currently support? Bill Cava.
So beyond Amazon Alexa, really support any voice first device that supports that has a kind of extensible aspect to it. So that's Google Home, that's Amazon Alexa, Cortana, even some of the devices that are, what was I describing earlier, the voices that are created by third-party organizations who are, kind of creating these more, what's the word I'm looking for, industry-specific voice-first devices. So we have a partner that's created one for healthcare. It's a HIPAA-compliant voice-first device called Pillow. So a wide range of devices we can support. That's the nutshell. But it's also beyond just voice-first devices, but it's additionally, like I was saying, the text-based conversational interfaces as well. So that's, text-based SMS, web-based chat, but even, if there's a situation where you'd want to kind of extend the experience out to chat providers like Facebook, Slack, Skype, et cetera, that's possible as well. It's from Orbita's standpoint, you manage the conversation and you can deliver it out to really any of these channels that you're interested in supporting. So, that's the concept. You manage the conversation once, then you can publish it out to multiple channels. And then the nice thing is it's not a kind of not binary, but it's not, the channels aren't mutually exclusive. So by that, I mean, you might have a conversational experience delivered through a Google Home in someone's, bedroom when they wake up. They're finding out about the medications that they need to take for the day. They're finding out what their care plan is for the day. Then they, get in their car and they're engaging with a voice first agent that's, available through their car. Many of the, standard automakers are putting voice first devices in their autos, and you're going to see that over the next year. Not just the, high-end cars, but kind of everyday cars that people drive will include these voice first devices. And somebody gets to a restaurant and not in a place where they can talk to a device, but they want to say, they're trying to help manage their diabetes. They want to log what kind of food they had for lunch. They could text a text message to that same agent, but through a text-based interface. So it's the same agent, same experience, same knowledge, context, and history, but different channels.
Super. Thanks, Bill. This is for Jordan. What's the one thing you wish you had known when you started building the Jeopardy skill?
Let's see. I think that largely it was, how users interact with it, and obviously no one really knew at the time, but Jeopardy is difficult, and we saw a lot of problems with silence. That was probably one of our biggest problems. People thought that the skill was broken because people wouldn't respond and the skill would just shut down. That's just a feature of the device. It's just a way that the Alexa service works. So that's something that would have been really helpful early on to really have a better understanding of how that works, and how users would kind of interact with it. The way we mitigated against that is that we just improved that reprompt messaging. Initially, I think the reprompt was just repeating the question, or we may not even had one in the very beginning. They just turned off after the 7 or 8 seconds of silence. So we just improved that. We're hoping in the future that there are ways to better handle silence, especially in a game context where your silence is a form of response. And you think about some of these kind of choose your own adventure games that are out there. They give you a timer to make a choice between A, B, C, or D. If you don't make any choice, it essentially makes a fifth choice for you. So we're hoping stuff like that will be possible. We'll just have to see kind of how Amazon supports it. I believe it's available right now for Google Home in terms of that interaction. We haven't developed anything for Google Home yet, but yeah, we're excited to open it up more.
Super. That's the wrap. We are at the top of the hour, and certainly appreciate everyone's time and interest. Jordan, especially thank you to you on behalf of the Orbita team. And Bill, certainly wonderful again to work with you on this. And please be in touch with us if you have additional questions that we can answer. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.